Have you ever thought about how, like, an idea becomes real? Like, you know how that spark in your mind turns into a finished project or a decision?
Hmm.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into a concept that explains just that.
Okay.
The 7 stages of creation.
Wow.
And get this,
Okay.
we're not just talking about building a birdhouse or something. We're talking about, like, the creation of everything, the
Yeah.
whole universe.
Yeah.
Our main guides on this journey are going to be excerpts from the Baha'i writings and commentaries by Sheikh Abad.
What's so fascinating about this topic is that these sources, even though they come from very different backgrounds, they kind of come together
Hmm.
to show us that the universe, it's not just like some cold machine.
Right.
It's more like a living process, and we're all part of it.
Yeah, it's not every day we get to peek behind the curtain of existence like this.
Yeah.
I'm already intrigued, especially because we're blending Baha'i and Islamic thought here. And I have to admit, I'm not that familiar with either. So where do we even begin with these 7 stages?
So let's lay the groundwork first with the Bob's framework,
Yeah.
which outlines the 7 stages as will, purpose, predestination, fate, permission, fixed time, and the book.
Okay.
Kind of think of it as a cosmic recipe. Each ingredient builds upon the last one to create the grand feast of existence.
Okay, a cosmic recipe.
Yeah,
I like that. But I'm guessing this isn't like a brand new idea that came out of nowhere.
you're right. You're right. This concept actually has roots in like earlier Islamic thought,
Right.
going all the way back to teachings that are attributed to Jafar an-Nadiq, who is a very prominent figure in Shi'i Islam.
Oh, okay.
So these ideas have been, simmering for centuries.
Fascinating. So let's break down this recipe. First up, the will.
Okay.
What's the big deal about this stage? What is it all about?
The will is where it all begins. Just imagine a universe like with absolutely nothing in it. And then suddenly, bam, the will emerges totally on its own. This is the initial spark of creation, pure potential exploding into being.
Hold on. So you're saying created from nothing? That kind of sounds like the Big Bang Theory, doesn't it?
There are definitely parallels, but the Bab, he takes it a step further. He emphasizes that the will is the ultimate uncaused cause.
Hmm.
So this is really a powerful idea that challenges our typical understanding of like cause and effect.
Right.
The Bab is essentially saying that this will, this divine spark, is the source of everything, the ultimate driving force behind creation.
So this will, this divine spark, it just
Yeah.
kind of pops up out of thin air.
Right.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Yeah, it's definitely a mind-bending concept.
Yeah.
The Bab himself uses this analogy of fire, water, and earth.
Hmm.
And he explains that nothing can exist without going through these like basic elements, just like the stages of creation.
Okay, I see. So the will is the initial spark,
Yeah.
the fire that sets the whole process in motion.
Precisely. And it's really crucial to remember here that the Bab, he's not saying that God and creation are the same thing.
Right, right.
He rejects the idea of oneness of existence and makes a very clear distinction between the creator and the created.
Okay, that makes sense. So the universe is distinct from God, but it's born from this God's will, kind of like an artist and their painting.
Absolute perfect analogy. The painting is its own creation, but it originated from the artist's, mind and skill.
All right, so we've got the spark, the will, the fire.
Uh-huh.
What happens next in this cosmic recipe?
With the will as the foundation, we move on to purpose and predestination.
Okay.
Think of these as the blueprint and design phases. Remember that project analogy we were talking about?
Uh-huh.
So you have the idea, the will, but then you map out all the details, right?
Right.
You plan all the steps, you gather the resources. That's what's happening here, but on this grand universal scale.
So that raw potential of the will is now taking shape and finding direction.
Exactly. And the language that's used to describe predestination is just breathtaking.
Mm.
It's described as this vast, limitless ocean, a pitch-dark night which cannot be traversed.
Hmm.
But within that vastness, there's a sun that's shining,
Wow.
suggesting that there's order within this apparent chaos.
Wow, that's a powerful image. I can almost feel the sense of potential in that darkness. But, if everything's predestined, what about free will? Where does that fit in? Does it even exist?
That's the million-dollar question. Even at this stage of predestination, the Bab seems to suggest that things have a choice, a capacity to incline towards good or evil. It's like free will is woven into the fabric of existence,
Right.
present even in this blueprint phase.
So it's not just like everything is completely predetermined.
Not quite. The Bab doesn't necessarily give us all the answers, but he does acknowledge this very fascinating paradox. And it's something we'll definitely explore further as we go deeper into these stages.
Definitely something to keep in mind. Okay, so we've got the blueprint, the grand plan. What's next?
Well, after the design phase, we have to execute, right?
Right.
So enter fate and permission. The stages where things get real, where the potential that was outlined in predestination takes concrete form in the physical world.
So this is where we go from like blueprints to bricks and mortar.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Sheikh Ahmad uses this great analogy to illustrate this.
Okay.
He compares predestination to measuring the materials for a bed and then fate to the actual assembly of the bed. So we're moving from this abstract realm of potential to this like tangible reality of existence.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture. We've got the spark of the will, the blueprint of purpose and predestination, and now with fate and permission, it's all coming together.
You got it. And that brings us to this next intriguing stage, which is fixed time. But before we jump into that, what are your initial thoughts so far? Anything standing out to you about these first stages?
Honestly, it's a lot to take in. This whole concept of the will as the uncaused cause is really pushing my thinking. And the imagery that's used to describe predestination, you know, that vast ocean with the sun shining within it.
Yeah.
It's just stunning.
It is, isn't it? And that image really speaks to the fact that even though things are kind of preordained, there's still room for, dynamism, for light to emerge from darkness. It's not a rigid or deterministic system.
Okay, things are starting to click. We've got this spark, the plan, the building process. Now what? Does the universe just stop there?
Not quite.
Okay.
Remember, each creation has its own journey, its own unique set of potentialities.
Yeah.
So that's where fixed time comes in, also known as Ajal. Think of it as the lifespan of everything that exists.
So like a predetermined expiration date? A cosmic countdown clock?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Fixed time really emphasizes that everything has its allotted time, its beginning and its end.
Right.
And it's inherently connected to destiny, suggesting that there's this grand timeline for the universe and everything within it.
I see. So even with this grand plan, this predestination, there's also this element of time, like a sense that everything has its season.
Exactly. And this actually ties into the final stage,
Yeah.
the book, or kitab.
Okay, the book. That sounds pretty mysterious.
Yeah.
What exactly does that represent?
The book signifies culmination, completion.
Okay.
It's the point where everything kind of comes full circle, returns to its source. Remember that feeling of accomplishment when you finish a big project, that sense of closure. Think of the book like that, but on this grand cosmic scale.
So if fixed time is the countdown, the book is like the final page, the closing chapter.
Yeah, a perfect analogy.
Okay.
It really suggests a sense of purpose and direction to the entire creative process. It's not just this random unfolding. There's inherent order, a trajectory that ultimately leads back to the source.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Sheikh Ahmad uses this very striking image of a four-pillared throne to represent some of these stages. Right. Can you tell me more about that? Because I'm a very visual person, and that really piqued my interest.
Absolutely. Sheikh Ahmad really cleverly uses this image to illustrate the first four stages. So will, purpose, predestination, and fate. He describes these as the four pillars that support the throne of God. And each one has a specific color and symbolism. So imagine this magnificent throne supported by these pillars, each one representing a key aspect of the creative process.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Walk me through these pillars and what they mean.
Okay, so let's start with the white pillar, which is located in the upper right. This symbolizes the will. It represents its purity and simplicity. So it's the foundation, the purest form of potential, untainted by any limitations.
So like the pure white light of creation.
Exactly.
Unsullied by anything.
Exactly. Then just below it, you have the yellow pillar. This one represents purpose. It signifies that the will is now taking on a more defined shape, a direction.
Okay, that makes sense. Yellow often represents energy and action. So it's like that initial spark is starting to move and create.
Precisely. Now, on the upper left, we have the green pillar. This represents predestination. Green, is often associated with life and growth and the balance of nature.
So it's fitting that it represents predestination, the stage where all potentialities are laid out, like seeds waiting to sprout.
Right. Green also signifies like a mixture of light and dark, reflecting this, complexity of predestination, how it encompasses both unity and multiplicity.
I'm really seeing how these colors bring the concepts to life.
Yeah.
What about the last pillar?
The final pillar, located on the lower left, is red. This one represents fate, the culmination of the creative process. where things become manifest in the physical world.
Red, the color of action, of passion, of bringing things to life. It fits perfectly.
You got it. Now imagine these four pillars working together, supporting this throne of God. They're not separate, isolated entities. They're interconnected, interdependent, each stage flowing into the next to create this, incredible structure.
Wow, I'm starting to see how all these abstract concepts are actually interconnected,
Yeah.
part of a larger unified process.
And that's what makes this whole exploration so fascinating. It really challenges us to think beyond our limited perspective, to see the universe not as this collection of random events, but as this beautifully orchestrated symphony of creation.
Okay, so we've kind of explored these 7 stages, but earlier you mentioned 27 letters of knowledge. I have to admit, I'm a little lost on that one. Can you shed some light on what that means?
Absolutely. So in the Baha'i writings, there's this concept of the 27 letters of knowledge,
Okay.
with only 2 being revealed by the prophet so far. These letters represent a complete understanding of creation, a level of knowledge that's still, largely hidden from us.
So we're only working with a tiny fraction of the information.
Exactly. We've only read, the first couple pages of a very long and complex book.
Right.
And according to the Baha'i writings, the remaining 25 letters, which represent this complete knowledge, will be revealed by the Qa'im, a future figure who will usher in a new era of understanding and spiritual enlightenment.
Wow, that's a pretty mind-blowing concept. So there's a whole universe of knowledge waiting to be unveiled.
Yeah.
And this Qa'im will be the one to do it.
Precisely. It's a tantalizing prospect, you
Yeah.
know. Just imagine the insights that we might gain when those remaining letters are revealed. It's a good reminder that this journey of knowledge is never complete.
It's definitely humbling to think about how much we don't know. Okay, so we've got these 7 stages, this grand cosmic recipe for creation. But how does it all relate to us? I mean, is this just a theoretical concept, or does it have, practical implications for our lives?
That's a great question. And that's actually where this whole deep dive gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because these stages, they're not just abstract concepts.
Okay.
They're reflected in our own lives.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How so?
Think about the process of, setting a goal.
Okay.
It starts with that spark of inspiration, a desire, right?
Yes.
That's the will in action. Then you define your purpose, the specific outcome that you want to achieve.
So I'm already working with these first 2 stages
Yeah.
without even realizing it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then comes predestination. You plan the steps, gather the resources, map out your course of action. This is where you're laying the groundwork for your goal to manifest.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then comes fate, the execution phase.
Okay.
You put your plan into action, you work towards your goal, and things start to take shape in the real world.
So just like the universe unfolds according to this divine plan, we go through these stages.
Yeah.
In our own endeavors, big or small.
Precisely. And just like everything in the universe has its fixed time, we also have, our allotted lifespan, our unique journey within the grand scheme of things.
So we're not just passive observers in this cosmic drama. We're active participants
Right.
following a similar creative process.
Exactly. And that's the key takeaway here. We're like these microcosms of the universe, embodying the same principles that govern the creation of everything.
That's actually quite empowering, isn't it?
It is. It reminds us that we have the power to create, to shape our own destinies, within this framework of the divine plan.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all connects, but I have to admit, I still have questions about free will and predestination. If everything has this fixed time, if there's this predetermined plan, how much control do we really have over our lives?
That's the age-old question.
Yeah.
And Sheikh Ahmad offers some really interesting insights into how different groups interpret these concepts. So he contrasts the view of those who see fate as this, unchangeable decree with the perspective held by the people of the house, who see predestination as preceding fate.
People of the house. Who are they?
So, in the context of Sheikh Ahmad's writings, the people of the house refers to the family of the Prophet Muhammad,
Oh, okay.
and particularly his descendants, who are considered the rightful successors to his spiritual authority. So they hold a particular interpretation of fate and predestination that emphasizes human agency
Okay.
within the divine plan.
So it's not this simple case of everything being just predetermined. There's room for choice, free will to operate. within the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so enriching, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not just getting one perspective. We're getting this whole tapestry of ideas woven together from these different sources and traditions.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, with each piece offering a glimpse into this larger, more complex picture.
Precisely. And remember how we talked about the 27 letters of knowledge, with only 2 being revealed so far?
Right, right.
This actually raises this very important question. How do we approach knowledge? Do we only rely on, logic and observation? Or is there a role for something beyond reason, like intuition or revelation, in understanding these deeper mysteries?
It's almost like we're being invited to acknowledge the limits of our intellect, to approach these concepts with a sense of humility and openness.
And perhaps that's the key takeaway here. The 7 stages of creation, they're not just these abstract concepts. They're a reminder that the universe is far grander and more mysterious than we can fully grasp.
So it's not about, finding all the answers.
Mhm.
It's about embracing the mystery,
Yeah.
the wonder of it all.
Absolutely. And it's about recognizing that the journey of discovery, the process of exploring these concepts and applying them to our lives, is just as important as the destination.
Okay, that's a really helpful perspective. But how do we actually apply this understanding to our lives? How do we move beyond the theoretical and make these stages a lived reality?
Well, Sheikh Ahmad provides a fascinating example of how God's creative action unfolds through these stages. And he uses this really, he uses the analogy of a sentence.
Okay, a sentence.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear how that connects.
He actually points to this passage in the Quran
Okay.
that says, "Glorify the name of your Lord, the Most High, who created all things, then fashioned them, who predetermined them, then guided them." And he explains that this sentence perfectly mirrors the 7 stages, with each phrase representing a specific stage.
Okay, so break it down for me. How does that sentence relate to the stages?
He says that he created means he willed,
Uh-huh.
which is like bringing something into existence out of nothing. The first stage, the will,
Yeah.
then he fashioned means he purposed, giving that creation a specific form, its purpose.
So this sentence is like a blueprint for creation,
Hmm.
a linguistic representation of the 7 stages.
Exactly. And he goes on to explain that he predetermined means he set limitations, like its lifespan, its characteristics, its boundaries. This is predestination in action. And finally, he guided them, implies that God doesn't just set things in motion and leave them to fend for themselves.
Right.
He provides guidance, a path to follow.
It's like God sets the stage, provides the tools, but each creation has a role to play in its own development.
A perfect analogy is not just a one-way street. There's this really dynamic interplay between divine will
Right.
and this inherent potential within each created thing.
Right.
And this interplay is evident throughout the 7 stages, from the initial spark of the will to the finality of the book.
So this process of creation isn't just about the initial act of bringing things into existence. It's an ongoing dynamic process that continues throughout the lifespan of each creation.
Precisely. Think about the growth of a tree, the evolution of a species, or even the development of human society. These are all examples of how these 7 stages are constantly at work, shaping and reshaping reality. It's not this static one-time event. It's a very dynamic, unfolding process.
And what's really fascinating is that this process isn't limited to just the physical world, right? It also applies to the realm of knowledge and understanding.
Absolutely. Remember how the Baha'i writings talk about this sacred, all-encompassing word that will be revealed by the Keem?
Right.
The word that holds the key to unlocking those remaining 25 letters of knowledge.
Right, right.
This suggests that the process of creation isn't just about this physical universe.
Right.
It's also about the unfolding of knowledge, the revelation of truth, the evolution of consciousness itself.
It's like these 7 stages are a blueprint for how we understand and interact with the world,
Yeah.
both physically and mentally.
Exactly. And that understanding, just like the universe itself, is constantly evolving.
Okay, now I'm really seeing the bigger picture here. But we've talked a lot about this sacred, all-encompassing word that the Qaim will reveal.
Right.
What does that mean exactly? What is this word?
Sheikh Ahmad actually offers some really fascinating insights into what that word might represent. He draws a parallel between this Quranic verse, he taught Adam all the names, and the Bab's explanation of the letters B and E in B,
Okay.
representing the stages of will and purpose.
So he's connecting this word to the very act of creation, the initial stages of will and purpose.
Exactly. It's like he's suggesting that true knowledge,
Mm.
the kinds that's represented by those 27 letters, is ultimately about understanding the essence of creation, the interplay between will, purpose, and all the other stages that shape reality.
Okay, so this word isn't just a collection of words or concepts. It's something more profound, something that encompasses this act of creation.
Precisely. And he suggests that this understanding is deeply rooted in the teachings of the prophets, particularly Muhammad and his family, the people of the house that we talked about.
Right.
They've been instrumental in revealing the two letters that we currently understand, and they will also play a role in unveiling the remaining 25 when the Qiyam arrives.
It sounds like we're talking about like a level of knowledge that goes beyond just the intellect, something that's more experiential, more intuitive.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
Sheikh Ahmad challenges this idea that knowledge is solely about acquiring facts and information.
Right.
He suggests that true knowledge is about understanding the principles behind those facts, the underlying causes and connections that give meaning and coherence to our experiences.
So it's not just about what we know, it's about how we know.
Right.
About connecting to a deeper source of understanding.
Exactly. And he uses this analogy of polluted springs, representing, fragmented knowledge, disconnected from its source, versus these crystal clear springs, which represent knowledge flowing directly from the divine source, unclouded by human limitations.
Wow, that's a powerful image. So how do we tap into these crystal clear springs? How do we access this deeper level of knowledge?
Sheikh Ahmad suggests that it's not about relying solely on reason and logic. He actually criticizes philosophers who get, too caught up in intellectual analysis.
Right.
And he suggests they often miss the deeper, more intuitive understanding that comes from recognizing the interconnectedness of all things.
So it's about connecting to something beyond the rational mind.
Right.
Something more intuitive, more spiritual.
Precisely. And he emphasizes that this deeper understanding is cultivated through spiritual practices, through contemplation, meditation, and the study of sacred texts.
So engaging with these texts, not just with our minds, but with our hearts.
Right.
Allowing their wisdom to penetrate us and transform us.
Exactly. It's about aligning ourselves with this divine will, opening ourselves to this flow of inspiration and insight that comes from a source beyond ourselves.
It's like we need to cultivate, a different way of knowing, a way of perceiving the world that goes beyond our five senses and our rational mind.
You got it. And this way of knowing is what allows us to grasp the true meaning of the 7 stages of creation and their implications for our lives.
So it's not just about intellectually understanding the stages, but also about experiencing them, feeling their power, and recognizing how they play out in our lives and in the world.
Exactly. And this experiential understanding, Sheikh Ahmad suggests, is really crucial for unlocking these mysteries of fate and predestination.
Okay.
He believes that by understanding this dynamic interplay between divine will and our own inherent potential, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the complexities of free will and destiny.
It sounds like he's encouraging us to move beyond the intellectual debates and to seek a more direct and experiential understanding of these concepts.
Precisely. He really emphasizes that the 7 stages are not just these abstract concepts. They're a reflection of the very fabric of reality. And by understanding these principles, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the interconnectedness of all things, the order and purpose that underlie this, apparent chaos of existence.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this kind of understanding can lead to a different way of being in the world. A sense of peace and harmony that comes from recognizing our place within this grand scheme of things.
And that's what makes this whole exploration so profound. It's not just about, intellectual knowledge. It's about cultivating a sense of wonder, of awe, of recognizing our participation in this universe that's far greater and more mysterious than we can possibly imagine.
That's a beautiful way to put it. But I have to admit, I'm still kind of wrestling with this idea of God's knowledge. Does God really know everything, even the future? And if so, how does that work with free will?
That's a question that's puzzled theologians and philosophers for centuries. And Sheikh Ahmad really dives headfirst into this complex topic. And he challenges some common assumptions about God's knowledge.
Okay, I'm all ears. How does he approach this?
So he argues against this idea that God's knowledge is just this giant database of facts, or that it's separate from God himself. Instead, he proposes that God's knowledge is inseparable from his being, It's an inherent aspect of his divine essence.
So it's not like God has a giant notebook where he's written down everything that will ever happen.
Not at all. He uses this really beautiful analogy, describing God's knowledge as a mirror that reflects everything in existence. But that mirror isn't separate from God. It's an integral part of his being.
Okay, that's a really thought-provoking image. So God's knowledge is more like a reflection of reality, a perfect and complete understanding of everything that is, was, and will be.
Precisely. And this knowledge encompasses, not just the past and present, but also the future. All potentialities and possibilities within the grand scheme of things.
Okay, now we're back to this big question. If God knows everything, including the future, doesn't that mean we're just puppets? That free will is an illusion.
That's the paradox, isn't it? But Sheikh Ahmad doesn't shy away from it. He suggests that God's knowledge of the future doesn't negate free will. Rather, it encompasses it.
Okay, I'm not sure I follow. How can God know the future and we still have free will?
So he argues that God's knowledge is so vast, so comprehensive, that it includes all possible choices and their consequences.
Right.
But it doesn't determine which choices we'll make.
So it's like a choose-your-own-adventure book. God knows all the possible endings, but we're the ones choosing which path to take.
A fantastic analogy. It's like God sets the stage, provides the actors with their scripts, but it's up to each individual to decide how they'll play their role.
That's a really interesting way to think about it. It doesn't like completely resolve the paradox, but it helps me to grasp the concept a little better. It's like God knows all the possibilities, but we have the power to choose which possibility becomes reality.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of this whole exploration. We're dealing with concepts that really transcend our everyday experience, concepts that require us to stretch our imaginations and challenge our assumptions about how the universe operates.
So it's okay to not have all the answers. To embrace the mystery and continue exploring these concepts with an open mind and heart.
Absolutely. That's what makes this journey of knowledge so rewarding. It's not about finding this definitive solution to every question. It's about engaging with these ideas that really push our thinking and inspire us to delve deeper into the mysteries of existence.
I'm starting to see that. So this isn't about reducing these grand concepts to these simplistic explanations. It's about expanding our capacity to hold paradox and embrace the vastness of what we don't know.
Precisely. And it's about recognizing that the human mind is really limited in its capacity to fully grasp the nature of God's knowledge. We're dealing with infinite concepts that defy our kind of finite understanding.
Okay, that's humbling. So where do we go from here? How do we actually integrate this understanding into our lives?
It begins with a shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing ourselves as these isolated individuals tossed about by the whims of fate, we start to recognize that we're active participants in this ongoing process of creation. We're not just passengers on Spaceship Earth.
Right.
We're part of the crew responsible for steering the ship towards a brighter future.
Okay, I like that analogy. So how do we take the wheel? How do we become more conscious creators?
It starts with understanding those 7 stages, recognizing how they operate in our own lives and in the world around us. It's about recognizing that we have a role to play in shaping our destinies, influencing the direction of human history, and contributing to the evolution of consciousness itself.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Well, it is, but it's also incredibly empowering. It suggests that we're not just victims of circumstance. We have agency. We have the power to make choices, to act in ways that align with our deepest values and aspirations.
So it's not about passively accepting whatever comes our way. It's about actively shaping our lives and the world around us.
Precisely. It's about embracing the power of the will, aligning our purpose with a greater good, and actively participating in shaping a more harmonious reality.
That's a powerful message, but how do we practically do that? Where do we even begin?
Sheikh Ahmad offers some really interesting insights into how understanding the 7 stages can help us navigate the complexities of fate and predestination topics that often cause confusion and debate.
Okay, I'm definitely interested in hearing more about that. I still have a lot of questions about fate and free will.
He emphasizes that predestination, as understood by the people of the House, precedes fate, meaning that the blueprint for our lives is laid out in advance, but it's not a rigid, deterministic plan.
So it's more like a map than a set of pre-programmed instructions.
Exactly. Predestination outlines the potentialities and possibilities for our lives, but it doesn't dictate the specific choices we make or the paths we ultimately take.
So there's still room for us to exercise our free will, to choose our own adventure, so to speak.
Precisely, think of it like a map. A map can show you all the possible routes to your destination, but it doesn't force you to take any particular route.
It's up to you, the traveler, to decide which path to take based on your preferences, circumstances, and free will.
Exactly. Predestination is like a cosmic map outlining the terrain of our lives, but we're the ones who navigate that terrain, making choices and forging our own paths within the framework of the divine plan.
Okay, that's a really helpful way to understand it. It gives me a sense of both agency and connection to something larger than myself.
And that brings us back to the crucial role of free will. Sheikh Ahmad emphasizes that free will is not an illusion. It's an essential aspect of the creative process woven into the very fabric of reality.
So we're not just puppets dancing on strings.
Not at all. God, in his infinite wisdom, created a universe where we have the capacity to make choices, to exercise our agency, and to shape our own destinies.
So this freedom to choose, to act, to create is actually a gift from God, an essential part of who we are.
Exactly. And this freedom is what gives meaning and purpose to our lives. It allows us to grow, learn, and evolve, to experience the full spectrum of human emotions, and to ultimately realize our full potential as creative beings.
Wow, that's a beautiful way to think about it. But doesn't this freedom also come with responsibility?
Absolutely. Sheikh Ahmad emphasizes that our choices have consequences not just for ourselves, but for the world around us.
So we can't just do whatever we want without considering the impact on others.
Precisely, he reminds us that we're all interconnected, part of a vast web of relationships that extends throughout creation. Our actions, both positive and negative, ripple out through this web, affecting others and shaping the collective destiny of humanity.
So it's not just about making choices that benefit ourselves. It's about considering the well-being of all, making choices that align with the divine will and promote harmony and balance in the world.
That's the heart of it. True freedom doesn't lie in pursuing selfish desires. It lies in aligning our will with the divine will, in using our creative power to serve a higher purpose.
That's a powerful concept. So understanding the 7 stages isn't just about intellectual knowledge. It's about cultivating a sense of responsibility, a commitment to using our free will wisely and compassionately.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're not just individuals striving for our own happiness. We're part of something much larger than ourselves. A cosmic tapestry woven together by the threads of divine love, purpose, and creative power.
So we're not just individual threads. We're part of a larger design, a grand tapestry that we're weaving together through our choices and actions.
A beautiful way to put it. And it's through this understanding that we can move beyond the illusion of separation and recognize our interconnectedness with all things.
Okay, I'm really starting to grasp the depth and complexity of these ideas, but earlier you mentioned that Sheikh Ahmad delves into some specific details about these stages, offering insights that can deepen our appreciation for their interconnectedness. Can you tell me more about that?
Absolutely. He highlights the relationship between the first 4 stages: will, purpose, predestination, and fate. Remember that image of the 4-pillared throne we discussed earlier?
Right, each pillar representing a different stage of the creative process.
He describes these 4 pillars as the foundation of the throne of God, each one essential to the stability and magnificence of the whole structure. And he even assigns specific colors to each pillar, further enriching our understanding of their symbolism and significance.
Okay, remind me about the colors and their meanings.
The white pillar, representing the will, symbolizes purity and simplicity. It's the foundational principle, the pure potential from which everything arises. Think of it as the purest, most unadulterated form of divine energy.
So it's the source, the origin point of creation, unconditioned and limitless.
Precisely then. Just below it, we have the yellow pillar representing the purpose. This signifies an increase in heat and activity as the will starts to take shape to manifest a specific intention.
So yellow represents energy, movement, and intentionality.
Exactly. Then on the upper left, we have the green pillar representing predestination. This symbolizes the mixture of light and darkness, unity and multiplicity, as we discussed earlier.
It's like the blueprint of creation encompassing all possibilities. The seeds of all that will be.
Precisely. And finally, on the lower left, we have the red pillar representing fate. This embodies the culmination of the creative process, the point where potential becomes actuality, where the blueprint comes to life in the concrete world of form and manifestation.
Red, the color of action, of passion, of bringing things into being. It makes perfect sense.
Now imagine these 4 pillars working together, supporting the throne of God. They're not isolated entities. They're interconnected, interdependent, each one flowing seamlessly into the next to create this magnificent structure.
It's a beautiful image, isn't it? And it helps me to understand how these stages are not separate events. They're part of a continuous unified process.
It is a beautiful image.
Yeah.
And these four pillars are not just symbolic representations, he suggests. They are reflections of a deeper reality, a realm beyond the physical universe that he calls the morn of eternity.
The morn of eternity. That sounds intriguing. Can you elaborate on that?
It's like he's suggesting that the physical universe, the world we experience with our five senses, is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a more profound, more mysterious reality that lies beyond our comprehension, a realm of pure potentiality from which all things emerge.
So it's like the source code of the universe, the foundation from which everything springs forth.
A perfect analogy, and he suggests that this morn of eternity is the source of the light that illuminates our world, the source of life, energy, and consciousness itself.
Wow, that's a mind-blowing concept. So there's this unseen realm, the source of all creation that's beyond our ability to grasp with our limited senses and intellect.
Yeah, exactly. It's a realm that we can only glimpse through the lens of faith, intuition, and spiritual insight. And he connects this morn of eternity to some fascinating Islamic concepts, drawing parallels between the four pillars and the four elements: fire, air, water, and earth.
So he's weaving together different threads of knowledge, connecting cosmology, metaphysics, and even the physical sciences.
Precisely, he argues that true knowledge is not about compartmentalizing different fields of study. It's about recognizing the underlying unity that connects all the common thread that runs through all of creation.
So everything is interconnected, and understanding the nature of this interconnectedness is key to unlocking the deeper mysteries of the universe.
That's the heart of it. He's challenging us to expand our understanding of reality, to consider the possibility that there are dimensions beyond our limited perception realms of existence that we can only glimpse through the lens of faith, intuition, and spiritual insight.
That's a pretty awe-inspiring perspective, isn't it? It makes me want to look beyond the surface of things, to see the world with new eyes, and to appreciate the beauty and wonder that often goes unnoticed.
It is awe-inspiring, and it brings us back to the question of how we can apply this understanding to our own lives. If the universe is governed by these seven stages, these four pillars, and this morn of eternity, how does that impact our choices, our actions, and our understanding of ourselves?
It's a big question, and honestly, I'm not sure I have a clear answer, but I'm definitely intrigued to explore it further. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that we're not just random beings tossed about by the winds of fate. We're expressions of the divine will, participants in the unfolding of creation, and co-creators with God himself.
Co-creators with God. That's a pretty bold statement.
It is, but it's also incredibly empowering. It suggests that we have a role to play in shaping our own destinies, in influencing the direction of human history, and in contributing to the evolution of consciousness itself.
So it's not just about understanding the universe, it's about actively participating in its creation and its unfolding.
Exactly. It's a call to action, an invitation to step into our full potential as creative beings, to embrace the power of the will, to align our purpose with the divine will, and to participate in the unfolding of fate in a way that benefits ourselves and the world around us.
It sounds like we're being asked to take responsibility for our part in the creative process, to become more conscious and intentional in our thoughts, words, and actions.
That's the heart of it, and it's not an easy task. It requires constant effort, self-reflection, and a willingness to align our will with the divine will, but the rewards are immense.
Okay, I'm starting to see the potential here. It's not just about studying creation, it's about becoming conscious participants in it, using these principles to build a future worthy of the divine spark within us all.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it leads us to an important point that Sheikh Hamad makes about how these concepts are often misunderstood, even within religious traditions.
Okay, I'm interested to hear more about that. How do people commonly misunderstand fate and predestination?
He points out that a lot of people, even within religious traditions, they have this very limited understanding of fate and predestination. And they cling to beliefs that are more about, like, cultural conditioning than genuine spiritual insight.
Okay.
He's especially critical of those who see fate as this harsh, unchangeable decree. He says that kind of thinking leads to resignation, to passivity, a feeling of helplessness when you're facing life's challenges.
So instead of being empowered by it, this view of fate actually makes us feel powerless.
Exactly. It takes away our sense of agency, our ability to actually shape our own lives. Sheikh Hamad, he reminds us that a true understanding of fate recognizes that dynamic interplay we've been talking about all along.
Right.
The divine will working with human choice and that unique potential within each of us.
So God has a plan, but it's not just like a set of instructions. It's more like a framework where we have the freedom to create.
That's a great way to put it. He uses this analogy of a garden. God provides the soil, the seeds, the sunshine, but it's up to the gardener to cultivate the garden, to tend to the plants, and ultimately harvest the fruits of their labor.
So fate isn't this fixed destiny that we're powerless to change. It's more like a collaborative process.
Exactly. It's a dynamic process, a collaboration between the divine will and human agency, and that requires us to be active participants, not just passive observers.
So we have to engage with our lives with intention, with purpose, and a willingness to make choices that align with our aspirations and, this divine plan for our growth.
Precisely. And that's where understanding these 7 stages becomes so powerful. It's not just about gaining knowledge, it's about cultivating a sense of empowerment, recognizing that we have the capacity to shape our destinies and contribute to the unfolding of creation in a positive way.
Okay, I'm seeing how this shifts the conversation around fate and free will.
Yeah.
It's not about being a victim of circumstance. It's about recognizing our power to co-create with the divine.
That's the key takeaway. We're not just pawns in some cosmic game. We're active players capable of influencing the outcome and shaping the future.
So we have this responsibility to use our free will wisely, to make choices that align with our values, and to contribute to creating a world that reflects, the divine attributes of love, justice, beauty, harmony.
Beautifully said. Understanding the 7 stages is about so much more than just intellectual knowledge. It's about cultivating a sense of purpose, meaning, empowerment. It's about embracing our role as co-creators with God and committing to using our free will to shape our destinies and contribute to a better world.
Now, I remember we talked about those remaining 25 letters of knowledge.
Right.
Being associated with that sacred, all-encompassing word, the word that will be revealed by the Qa'im. And Shaikh Hamad had some really interesting things to say about that.
He suggested that this word isn't just a bunch of words or concepts. It's this living, dynamic force, a manifestation of the divine creative power that just permeates all existence.
So it's more than just a message or a teaching. It's like the source code of reality itself.
Exactly. He even suggests that it's the foundation of reality, the source from which everything arises and to which everything ultimately returns.
Okay, now my mind is really blown. So this word is like the blueprint for the entire universe, the underlying code that governs the unfolding of creation.
That's the idea. And he emphasizes that understanding this word isn't just about, intellectual comprehension. It's about experiencing it, feeling its power in our lives, and aligning ourselves with its transformative energy.
No, it's not just about knowing the word. It's about embodying it, living it, letting it transform us.
He even draws parallels between this word and the concept of the logos in Greek philosophy.
Okay.
That divine reason that orders and governs the universe.
And how does that connect with Islamic thought?
So he links it to the first intellect in Islamic thought, the first emanation of God, the source of all knowledge and wisdom. So he's really bringing together these different strands of wisdom, connecting, ancient philosophy with the mystical teachings of Islam.
It's fascinating how he weaves together all these different perspectives to illuminate this concept of the word.
It really highlights how understanding this word isn't just some, intellectual exercise. It's about connecting to this divine source of creation, aligning our will with the divine will, and participating in the unfolding of the universe in a way that reflects our true potential as creative beings.
So understanding these 7 stages is like a pathway to spiritual transformation, to awakening to this divine reality that just permeates all things.
Exactly. It's about aligning ourselves with that creative power that brought the universe into being. And this awakening isn't like a sudden event. It's a gradual process, a journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth that requires patience, perseverance, a willingness to surrender to the divine will.
So it's about cultivating a heart that's receptive to divine inspiration, a mind that's open to new possibilities, and a spirit that's willing to embrace the unknown.
Precisely. And this journey isn't meant to be a solitary one.
Yeah.
We need the support of communities, the guidance of teachers, and the companionship of fellow seekers to help us along the way.
So it's about recognizing that we're all in this together, connected by this shared desire to understand the mysteries of creation and to fulfill our potential as creative beings.
Exactly. We can support each other in our individual and collective quests for knowledge, wisdom, and spiritual enlightenment.
Now, Sheikh Ahmad also gives some practical advice about how we can, like, prepare ourselves for this journey.
He did. He emphasized the importance of purifying our hearts,
Hmm.
letting go of negative emotions like greed, envy, and hatred, which can really cloud our perception and prevent us from connecting to the divine source.
So it's not just about intellectual understanding, but it's about doing inner work, cultivating qualities that allow us to connect to this, higher level of awareness.
That's it. We need to cultivate humility, compassion, and gratitude, which open our hearts to divine grace and allow us to see the world through the lens of love and understanding.
And he also talked about, like, seeking knowledge.
Yes, but not just any knowledge. He emphasized seeking spiritual knowledge,
Yeah.
the kind that comes from direct experience, contemplation, and deep engagement with sacred texts.
So reading these texts isn't just about, like, gathering information. It's
Right.
about letting their wisdom, like, penetrate our hearts
Hmm.
and transform our understanding.
Exactly. It's about approaching these texts with reverence, openness, and a willingness to be transformed by their teachings. And this spiritual growth isn't passive. It requires effort, discipline, and a willingness to, step outside our comfort zones.
So we need to actively engage in practices that help us cultivate those qualities.
Mm.
Needed to, access this deeper understanding and align ourselves with the divine will.
He encouraged practices like meditation, prayer, and service to others, which can help us to purify our hearts, expand our consciousness, and connect to that deeper source of wisdom and inspiration.
It sounds like understanding the 7 stages isn't just about acquiring knowledge. It's about embarking on this transformative journey,
Mm.
a path of spiritual growth and self-discovery.
That's the beautiful invitation embedded within this whole concept. It's a call to become conscious creators, to recognize the power that we hold, and to use that power to shape our lives and the world around us in a way that reflects the divine spark within us all.
Wow, that's a powerful message to end on. What a journey this has been. We've explored the 7 stages of creation, delved into their philosophical and spiritual implications, and even glimpsed into those mysteries of the morn of eternity.
Yeah, and we've seen how these stages aren't just like abstract concepts. They're a roadmap to understanding ourselves, the universe, and the very essence of existence.
I feel like this deep dive has given me so much to think about, so many new perspectives to consider.
Mm.
I have a feeling our listener is feeling the same way.
I'm sure they are. This whole exploration really invites us all to become conscious participants in this grand drama of creation, to recognize this interconnectedness of all things, and to use our understanding of the 7 stages to create a world that reflects the beauty, the harmony, and the wisdom of the divine.
It's a challenge, but it's also like an incredibly inspiring invitation.
Yeah.
A reminder that we're all part of something much greater than ourselves.
Hmm.
And that we have the power to contribute to, like, the unfolding of creation in a positive way.
And who knows what wonders await us as we continue to explore these concepts and strive to embody them in our lives. Perhaps as we deepen our understanding, we'll even catch a glimpse of those remaining 25 letters of knowledge, unveiling new dimensions of wisdom and insight that will further illuminate our journey.
That's a thought that fills me with, like, hope and excitement. The journey of discovery never ends, and the possibilities for growth and transformation are limitless.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of it all. The universe is constantly evolving. And so the 7 stages of creation are a reminder that we're all part of this grand unfolding process and that we have the power to shape the future one conscious choice at a time.